Good afternoon. Maurice Reid was my father, and he was in the RAF and had been in Singapore for 2 weeks before he was captured. He was taken to Java and was in a camp in Batavia. I remember my mother saying she didn't know if he was alive for several months, so it must have been difficult for both of them. After my mother died, we found a box of memorabilia, and it included a letter from my father, which said, "It will be an enormous relief to you when you receive a letter from me, but I hope to be home before that. It must have been a shock to you to know I am a prisoner of war, but you must keep your chin up." My dad never really spoke about his experience after he came home, but when I read this letter, I hear his voice coming off the page. I would love to be able to speak to him and my mother about their experiences of the war. That is why I think it's so important that we share these stories whenever we can, so we remember what they went through and keep their memories alive, and make sure it never happens again. Thank you all for passing on the stories to the next generation. And it's my pleasure to hand over to the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer.
Thank you so much, Veronica. I think that's so powerful, isn't it? Hearing the words and bringing back that bit of history for all of us, and that'll be a shared experience for so many people. So, Veronica, thank you very much for doing that. And I know as we were coming round, you're saying, I'm not sure why I'm doing this, but you just demonstrated why you're doing this. So thank you very, very much. And your father will be very, very proud to have seen and thought of you standing here in the garden of Downing Street, sharing those moments. So thank you so much for doing that. Because through that and through the very many other acts and letters and memories, I think it makes that generation feel so close to us today and brings it alive and reminds us of just how important it is to preserve these precious memories. And we should preserve them and cherish them and read them and remember them and pass them on. Because I know so many people here in the garden and across the country will have their own memories of family and loved ones. And it is a real privilege for me to welcome you to Downing Street and into this garden. This is the centre of government. This is where I work. It's where I live. And it is a privilege to have you here. And right that you are here, because this is a government of service, and therefore it's a government at your service. And so many of you have served and got family members who serve. So it's really fitting that you're here. And it's more than just a kind invitation for the afternoon. It's a reflection, I hope, of how important it is to us that we're able to have you here. So when I say it's a privilege, it really is my privilege to have you here. And I know that people have come from far and wide to be in the garden this afternoon to remember 80 years since our victory in World War II. And to take the opportunity, and it is the opportunity, to pay our respects to the many people who fought, who were captured, and of course who made the ultimate sacrifice in the Far East. And we do pay our respects here this afternoon, as we do so often. And it's a reminder that in the Cabinet Room, that's the room just up here, those 2 or 3 windows, and these doors are the doors to the Cabinet Room. That has been the Cabinet Room for decades and decades and decades. And it was in that room, in that Cabinet Room, just a few yards from us, that the new Prime Minister then, as it was, Clement Attlee, just been elected into office at the end of the Second World War, received the news of Japan's surrender. And it was in there that that news was broken and the nation begun to understand that now it really was the end of World War II. And as you can imagine, people took to the streets. We've talked to many of the people who took to the streets on those days. And that feeling that they had of freedom and peace at last. But I think alongside that feeling of joy at victory, relief at peace, was really a shared determination, a shared moment across the nation that victory also had to be a turning point for our country. Not just for a world that was crying out for peace, but for a country that owed a huge debt to those people who had fought for a better future, those who had made huge sacrifices, so we have the freedoms and the life that we enjoy today. And when we say we pay respects, that's what we mean by that, because we are exercising those freedoms every day because of what they did and the sacrifices that they make. And that, in a way, is the lesson that we carry with us today. It's the lesson that we must hold up every day. Our duty is to honour that sacrifice with every new generation. And that's what it means when we say we will never forget, because it doesn't just mean we will never forget a particular moment, the final end of World War II. But we must never forget what that gave us, what that gave our country, what that gave the world in terms of the freedoms and the values that we fight for. And of course, those values are still contested here. I sat on this terrace this very morning with President Zelensky, who is fighting for the same values as we were fighting for. And so when we say never forget, we must pass the stories of those that have gone before us. Those incredible stories, Veronica, like the stories that you just shared with us, and the stories that many others have shared. I've seen some of the extracts from the letters that were sent, which are extraordinary, exquisite memories and experiences and vignettes into life as it was then. Stories of camaraderie, of courage, real courage, from fighting in jungles, blistering heat, to the immense suffering of prisoners of war on the Burma Railway and elsewhere. And it was immense suffering, as many of you will know. But we also remind ourselves of what that was fighting for, a peace that is precious, that is fragile, as I say, that we can see on our own continent today, and the possibility of a better future for the next generation. And that is what the Attlee government took as its mission, creating an NHS, building homes fit for heroes, the welfare state. They were all good, important things for a government to do, but they were done with a sense of mission that we had to repay the debt that we owed to those that had made such a contribution in the Second World War, by building a new Britain that reflected the dignity of its people. And that is what my government is determined to do today. And that's why I stood outside Downing Street the day after the election last year and said we would be a government of service, that same sense that we're here to serve the country, to create a better country. And part of that, of course, is working with our allies to secure peace abroad. It is a continual project. It's not a project that ended 80 years ago by any stretch of the imagination. To rebuild Britain once more so it's a country that we can be proud of, that is capable of playing its full part on the world stage, to de-escalate tensions and bring about just and lasting peace in areas, including in our own continent. A country worthy of the soldiers that marched under our flag and showed the world that Britain is and will always be a beacon of peace and hope in a dangerous world. So thank you all for your service. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your experiences and keeping that story alive. And I really hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.